For the agenda today, we're going to do really two big things. One is give you a little background on Trustworthy, the origins, where we started, and why we're building the family operating system. And then we're going to spend most of our time showing you around the product, showing you some of the features, making sure we give you a good cross section of the product and show you the capabilities and value behind the product. And then we have some quick wrap up at the end, and happy to take questions towards the end. Let's get started. So in 2019, my co-founder and I, a guy called Dan McCool, were working at Microsoft, and our previous company had been acquired there. And we were working on Microsoft Office, the consumer SKUs of Microsoft Office, and thinking a lot about family as a customer. Also, we both started families around the same time, and we're thinking selfishly about our own needs. What are the needs of family? And that was a really interesting provocation around, okay, we thought about customers being consumers or customers being enterprises or companies. What are the needs of families? What does a family look like as a customer? So we started talking to some of our peers and quickly came across this idea of or the problem that lots of families and we ourselves were dealing with it, is having lots of bits of information in different silos all over the place, and that people then feeling sort of overwhelmed, and we heard this phrase again, it's all over the place, and that worried I'm going to lose something of value, that I might forget about it, and also if something were to happen to me, how would my family be able to find all that stuff? And so this is a problem that was really interesting to us. You know, we're 50 or 60 years into the information age. Families don't really have a system of record to manage their information. I'd worked at large enterprise companies before, and you know, they have hundreds or thousands of systems to keep track of information, but families didn't really have anything. That seemed kind of strange. So we delved into the problem a little bit more, and we found out that the problem had some real costs for families. That the average family was spending minimum of 51 hours a year trying to stay on top of all that information, all that household paperwork, and related critical tasks. And if they weren't on top of it, that they were incurring, on average in the US, almost $1,300. This number, 1,268, has gone up year by year for the last 5 years. This is what happens when you're not on top of things and you start incurring costs like late fees and penalties, overages, and then some of those things can add up to, you know, paying more insurance or affecting your credit score. So that's a really big number. It was something like $970 the year before. It went up a lot in the last year, but continues to go up. And then this last big component of anxiety, or, you know, mental load, this emotional anxiety that people are feeling around staying on top of all these things. And, you know, the amount of information that we all now have to deal with across our lives is only increasing. We're going to talk a little bit about AI today, but with generative AI, even more information being created than ever before across our lives, and us having to figure out what to do with it. We saw that most families had built some kind of system for themselves. We call that a DIY system, meaning they tried to build something with the tools at hand. And we've seen all kinds, sort of analog, paper-based systems, and almost every digital tool you can imagine has been used by different folks to address this. And from, you know, very basic, like a stack of papers on the desk somewhere or a shoebox in the closet, to beautifully elaborate systems that high net worth folks have built with their personal assistant, you know, cataloging every single thing in their home. So we've seen a full spectrum there. But the weird thing to us was that, like, why is every single family having to build something from scratch? And why is it not a tool set that's sort of, you know, purpose built for this? We tried using some of the off-the-shelf tools ourselves when we got started. We found they all kind of fell short in the same areas, meaning if I used a Google Doc or a spreadsheet or something, that I'm starting with a blank page. There's really nothing to guide me or tell me what to put into the system, or having an opinion about the best way to set this up. All those systems require me, if I built it myself, to maintain it ongoingly. There's no help or reminders along the way to do things, no prompts. All of them were universally what we call dumb containers, meaning if I put information into those documents, they don't understand anything about the information. They can't look at it and say, oh, here's a recommendation. Maybe we have something that could be better than the thing that you have, or looks like you have a gap in your system here. Is that something you'd like to find a solution for? A big one was not being able to handle temporal sharing. So this notion of time-based sharing, meaning if I'm sharing something with you, I might not want to share all of the information today. This is a big factor in family estate planning. I might want to hold some of that back for later versus sharing all of it now. So how do you handle that temporal nature of sharing in a system? Really none of the, if I share a Google document with you, I can't do that in a Google document. You're going to see everything I put in there. Some of the business models around the tools that we saw, they're free tools. So are you really the product? Is your information the product? Is that really secure? There wasn't really any notion of service. There was support, but not service that came along with those tools. And they just weren't purpose-built for families. They're good generic productivity tools that were adapted to this problem, but could we build something that was better, more suited to the use case? So we ended up building something we call the family operating system. And we coined that phrase because that was one that made sense to a lot of folks that we talked to, and sort of embodied the idea of, yes, this is a place to keep your family information safe and protected, but we want to make it not just a document store, we want to make it intelligent, right? We want to add some notion of you put your information in there and the system gives you something back in different ways. So we'll talk about what that added up to for us. Really this idea of protecting and optimizing all your family information across your life, across the life of your information. And this was really based on some primary use cases that we'd observed that families had built their systems for. One big one was, I just want access and utility from my information wherever I am, whenever I am. I need a bit of information. I'm looking for the VIN number for the car, or one of my child's social security numbers, or something like that. How do I get that information in the moment that I need it? I'm trying to get something done, maybe a transaction, and I'm being asked for information. I don't want to wait. I want to get this done right now. So that was a big use case. Another big one, of course, was if something were to happen to me, if I get hit by a bus, would my family be okay? Would they know where to go to find the important things, the life insurance policy and all the other relevant, asset and operational information and the emotional information as well. So those are the two big ones that we started with. Over the last few years, working now with thousands of families, these other ones have emerged. We've worked a lot with Gen X clients because they're the sandwich generation. They're thinking a lot about their own households and their own legacy and children, but they're also equally thinking about their parents. And many of our members have come to us and said, look, I love Trustworthy, but how do I get my parents' information set up in Trustworthy? How do I get ahead of that inevitable timeline? Or maybe I've dealt with it with one parent already. How do I, get this dialed in for that estate transition? So that's another big one we're addressing, and we've just launched a solution. We'll talk a little bit about that later. These other ones are really interesting too. So this idea of there's so much information happening today and across the household that it ends up quite often being bifurcated into two semi-black boxes, right? My partner manages one set of things. Maybe I manage education and healthcare, maybe they manage the finances. And I kind of know what's going on there, but not really. How do I bring that whole picture together to get this universal view of what's happening into this equitable view, this household equity equation that we can support within Trustworthy? And it's not just necessarily the two partners. It could be, the extended network as well, your loved ones and trusted advisors as well. And then this last one that is just emerging now, where families are using Trustworthy after the fact, after someone's passed away, as a way to collect and share all the information across the estate. So that's a new one that's emerging in the last 12 months or so. So those are the big use cases. If we look at what we've built to support those use cases, there's big components here. Just look to the right of this slide of the big components that we've built, and I'll go from the bottom up. Of course, a secure and private platform is a paramount consideration. We've invested heavily in building this and have capabilities that most other platforms just don't have in terms of keeping family information private and secure. We talked about this optimization component, so helping you keep your system up to date, and then making recommendations to make your system better over time. I just talked a little bit about collaboration, this idea of like this inner circle of loved ones and maybe family members, trustees, guardians, aunts, uncles, could be parents and adult children. We really kind of allowed for every family dynamic possible in that collaboration. And then outwardly to those trusted professionals, it could be a fiduciary, it could be an accountant, a wealth advisor, estate planning attorney, realtor. I mean, really anyone that you work with that might have access to some of your information for some period of time and might be an ongoing collaborator for you. And then this new element that we've introduced in the last couple of months, more intelligence around getting your information into Trustworthy and kind of building the system for you, which is a huge accelerant in terms of ease of use, or what we call effortless organization, getting everything set up in a way that means you don't have to do really any work. And you'll see how that works today. In support of that, on the left of the slide, we built all this facility to make it easy for you to adopt Trustworthy wherever you are, meaning maybe you get a piece of mail and you want to quickly get that into Trustworthy, and just you can use the mobile scanner to grab it. We've partnered with Ricoh or Fujitsu, who make ScanSnap scanners, so you can scan directly from your desktop scanner or your document scanner right into the Trustworthy inbox. And down through the list, all these different ways that you can quickly ingest information and curate your system, and then have the system take over and do the heavy lifting for you. I want to talk a little bit more about security. It's always a primary consideration. We always get questions about this, and I'm happy to field more questions. I'll just start by saying we have a very, very detailed view of our security practices and compliances at trustworthy.com/security. So if you want to go deep on our security story, that's the place to start. There's a long list of most of the things that we do there. We don't share everything, obviously, for security reasons, but that's a great place to go check out if you have detailed questions on security. Here is sort of the high-level view. This is a big part of our brand, and our brand promise to members is, we'll never share or sell your information. Only you can do that. And the things that we do to protect your information or raise the security posture of your family are, basically playing the hits here. Multi-factor authentication. We support multiple second-factor authentication, everything from text message through to a YubiKey or hardware key. There's a whole spectrum in between that. Of course, we support biometric authentication across devices. We encrypt all your data in all states. And we do network threat detection, among other things, to make sure that no one's probing the system or trying to hack into the system. And then the secret sauce that we add on that I don't think anyone else in the industry does this, but it's called tokenization. And it essentially replaces all the very secure information in your system with a token that only you have the key to retrieve. Beyond sort of the technical elements, we have a lot of compliance and third-party audits of our system to make sure that we're maintaining the highest standards. We're only available in US today, but we have to comply also to GDPR because we have expat clients who live in Europe, and that's a privacy standard we have to comply to for them. But you can see here we have SOC 2, SOC 3, GDPR, we're HIPAA compliant. We have the CCPA compliance for California as well. We've really invested very heavily in security. I'm happy to answer any specific questions around security as they come up. All right, that's enough of an introduction. I'm going to hand over to Kyle to lead you through the demo and show you the amazing platform that we've built in the family operating system.
All right, thanks, Nat. All right, so I'm going to start us off. We're going to look at some of the sort of latest features in Trustworthy that really help you get up and running. Will involve something that Nat mentioned called autopilot. Before we get into that, I'm going to launch a poll. So you'll see a little hint pop up saying there's a poll. You can click on that to access the poll, or in the very bottom right of your Google Meet, there's an icon called Activities that looks like shapes, triangle, square, circle. You can access the poll through that. I just want to get a sense of people's experience or exposure to AI-related tools based on some of the AI-assisted call recorders I've seen join this call. I think a lot of people have some experience, whether or not they know it or not. So, because we're going to be looking a lot at AI in the next few minutes here. So, one thing I want to do, we're not going to dig into every nook and cranny. I'm going to assume that you've got some level of experience with Trustworthy. I know some people are new on this call, but one thing I want to point out is all of your data inside Trustworthy is organized into these categories. If I click on insurance, I'll see my various insurance policies here. This is where you start to organize and connect the dots between the different data elements within Trustworthy, how this relates to a vehicle or how this insurance policy links to a home, who the policyholders are, all that stuff. Building this stuff out is where autopilot comes in, and it can start with a document, and then the autopilot can help you build these, what we call tiles, and form the connections between things. And that's where I want to start, is I want to show you some examples of uploading a bunch of files into Trustworthy and having it take you like 85% of the way there to completing these tiles. And then we'll talk about the next evolution of that. Let me just end this poll. It looks like a lot of people have some experience with AI. And it's really sort of built for what we're doing at Trustworthy. So I'm excited to show you something called the inbox. What I'm going to do in Trustworthy, and we'll look on this on iOS as well, but I'm going to start on the web, is I'm going to start with something called the inbox. And if you remember that slide that showed on the left-hand side, all the different inputs, like ways you can get stuff into Trustworthy, whether that's a scanner, the iOS app, bulk uploading files, Chrome extension, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to start with one of those methods, which is just bulk uploading files, just to give you a sense of what happens after you move these files in. So I'm going to grab a bunch of files that I have handy on my machine. We find a lot of people when starting out, they have some digital files already, whether they're on their machine, in another cloud service, in their email. If you have those files sitting on your machine, you can just drag them in. I'm dragging a whole pile of different files in here. And you'll see them snap in here. And what's going to happen now is Autopilot's going to review these files, and it's going to come up with suggestions as to what to do with it. Like, do I have a place for this already? If so, let's move it there. Do I need to create a new place to store this file, like a new insurance policy tile? It's going to take me through all of those things and even extract data to populate the fields in Trustworthy for you. So you can see that it's Autopilot is running through these different files. And this happens to be a medical insurance card, the first one up here. We've got some insights on this card. We're always creating a summary, a plain English summary of what this file is about. This is really handy for those lengthy files like trusts or wills and things like that. You can get a high-level summary of it. But the point of this inbox is like a place for you to put files without immediately needing to think through exactly where they're going to go and what you're going to do with them. AI is going to do a lot of that for you. So you can start to fire stuff into your inbox, and then the next time you return it to Trustworthy, you can start to move these files around. So with this very first file, it's telling me that you don't have a spot for this. You need to create a new medical insurance page. And essentially, if I click this plus button, it's going to do exactly that. It's going to create this page for my medical insurance. And then here's what you need to do with these files that are sitting in the inbox. We need to drag them over to a spot within this page. So in many pages, there's like a spot where it needs to go. So this is my medical ID card. So I can move it to the medical ID slot, and it's going to drop that file there. And then it opens up something called Autopilot. And Autopilot shows these things called autofills. And autofills are like extracting data from the card that we need to put into Trustworthy so that you're prepared for different life events. If you need to find this ID number, you need to find the card or who the covered members are, we got you. We can fill all that stuff in. So what it's doing is just giving you an opportunity to like review these things. And as you hover over them, it highlights exactly where it's going to put that data. Okay, you can see the purple highlight. And if I click accept, it fills in everything. And then a best practice is this section here. Let's double click in there and give it a better name. And let's call this Reynolds Family Medical. Okay, so now I've got this page here and I can start to put in other files on here as they come up. I can link it up to different contacts. I can add reminders on this, all sorts of stuff. Okay, you can see it's done the same thing over here for auto insurance. So I had an auto insurance policy that I uploaded and it doesn't see it in Trustworthy. There's no tile for this in Trustworthy. I click plus, it creates a page for that. I move the file over to the policy block and then these autofills will show up and they're going to fill in a bunch of data for me. So we're taking you pretty far to completing everything. You just need to approve a couple things. Here's one other one I want to show you an example of. This is a bank account. So I uploaded a bank statement. And what it's doing is it's creating a new bank account inside Trustworthy. I don't have a zone to move it to over here. There's no place within a bank account to upload files to this top section. But there is an area down at the bottom called additional files. And if I move it down there, or I create a subsection, and let's say we call this statements, you can, any page, you can create unlimited subfolders and move files there. And if I drag this file over, it knows that it's the first time it's seen that file. Oh, this one didn't have it. I thought I was going to autofill, but that one obviously didn't have anything for me. Let's look at this last one. This is a family ID. And it's, instead of asking me to add something new, what it's telling me is like, I already have a place for this. Let's move it over there. I already have a place called David Reynolds. So if I click this hint, it takes me over to David Reynolds' page. Oh, I should have cleaned up in advance. Sorry, let me just remove my existing license here. I was practicing before the demo, so I had stuff already in there. What happens here is when I click that hint and it takes me over there, again, I could just move this card over. And it gives me some autofill opportunities here. And I just accept these and populate those results. So what happens here is like, although we're asking you to prefer intervention here, we're showing you hints and suggestions, and we're giving you an opportunity to accept these autofills. We foresee a day in the near future where we're going to be able to allow you to go sort of full automatic on this to enable sort of full automation where you just send stuff into the inbox and it automatically moves it to the right spot, extracts data, and then summarizes that in an email follow-up later to say, hey, here's the things that we did for you. For now, as AI and this autopilot is new for a lot of people, we're allowing you to intervene, but we expect that there'll be a time in the near future where that's automated.
Kyle, it's great to see Autopilot grab all this information seemingly from the documents, but can you talk about what's happening behind the scenes here? How is this possible?
Right. So initially, we've got a pre-trained model running in a secure cloud on our own infrastructure. It doesn't, the data doesn't go off to any other third parties. It's running on our infrastructure. What happens when a document goes in is it analyzes the document. We've pre-trained it on a lot of hundreds of document types. So first what it does is it categorizes it. It says this is a tax document, this is a vehicle document, this is a family ID. And then what it does is it knows that there's, based on that document, there's a number of key facts that Trustworthy wants to know about that document, like a passport number, passport expiry date, all that stuff. It extracts that data for me so that when I do move it to the spot where it's going to be stored permanently, we can populate all the fields that Trustworthy needs based on that data. Okay, so it's not remembering, it's not training our own models inside our AI infrastructure. It's not remembering any of the historical data that gets put in there. It's just a one-time thing. We analyze the document, we look at our pre-trained models. If it matches, then we give you these results. And what I'll do in a couple of minutes is I'll send a document type in here that AI doesn't recognize, and I'll show you how to deal with that as well, because that's something you're going to encounter. Every day we're adding new support for new documents, but there's always going to be something that you encounter where we don't know exactly what it is. You can still deal with it. And then over time, we'll start to close those gaps and make sure we have coverage across everything. While I'm in here, if you remember, I moved that driver's license in and it extracted data from it. You can see that it created a renew driver's license reminder automatically based on that date that it input for you. As soon as you accepted those autofills, put in the data, it created that reminder. So for anything that's got a hard expiry date that comes out of the document, we're going to create those reminders for you automatically. One thing while I'm in here that's worth talking about, I think it's a feature that gets used quite frequently, is if I'm looking at a file, whether it's a picture like this or it's a 30-page PDF, like a power of attorney or something like that, you can click on the preview. And once you're looking at the preview, you can use this share link in circumstances where someone's asked you they need a copy of your ID or I temporarily need a copy of this file. You don't always have to invite everyone as a collaborator where they create an account on Trustworthy. You can share it if you know this is just an interim thing. I've got a mortgage broker. I went through this recently that needed a copy of this ID. And what I can do, instead of sending this in an email where it's going to live forever inside someone's inbox, is I can create a auto-expiring link based on some sort of timing. Do I want to give a link for 1 hour, 1 day, et cetera, et cetera? So once I create a 1 hour link, it's going to give me a URL that I could share with that person. They won't need to log into Trustworthy. They'll only be able to access this link for the next hour. I'll get an email notification as soon as it's clicked. I can expire that link. I can have faith that it'll get expired automatically, or I can expire it manually. If I know it's been used and I want to close the link down, I can turn it off automatically. So now I can take this link and share it by email, text, messenger, WhatsApp, whatever. And the recipient will be able to access that file temporarily. Okay, so the share function for share links, once you go into the preview, you can share things out. And then we'll talk about more elaborate collaboration later when collaborating with spouse or a wealth advisor or one of our certified experts or something like that. We'll share some of that momentarily. So if I look into what I'm going to do is let's look into my insurance for a moment, and we'll see it created a tile automatically based on that insurance card. I'm missing some things here. I'm missing some home insurance. I'm missing some auto insurance. I'm going to show you some of the other channels that you can tap into to receive documents into your inbox. So we looked at just bulk uploading a bunch of files. The next one I want to look at, we call it email to inbox. Everybody should be using this as far as I'm concerned. Let me show you some of the background of this. Essentially what it means is I can take any attachment that I see inside my email and I can forward it to Trustworthy, and it'll land in the inbox, it'll process, and the next time you log in, you'll have suggestions for what to do with that file, and you can move it to the right spot. Before I start forwarding an email or many emails, I just want to point out to you where you can get the email address to send to. If you go to your menu in the bottom left on desktop, and you can also access this on iOS, go to settings and go to email to inbox, and there's an email address here, and you can copy this email address and you can do something like you can add it to your Google contacts, you could add it to your Apple contacts, your Outlook contacts, so that you can call on it anytime you need it and forward stuff to your inbox. So let me show you what that's all about. I'm going to go into my email, and I've got a email here with 2 life insurance policies on it. All I need to do with this email is we're able to handle these attachments, and Trustworthy can deal with them if you forward it through this little kebab menu. You can do forward if it's in Gmail. You've also got a forward option here. Every mail client will be slightly different. But I'm going to send this to my inbox address. I added this as a contact so I can recall it anytime. And I just send. And in a couple minutes, it'll show up in Trustworthy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send something while we're at it that our system doesn't recognize. This is a septic system inspection, and I'm going to forward this as well. Okay, so we can see how we handle files that don't come with suggestions from our autopilot and what to do with them. So if I flip back to Trustworthy now and I open up my inbox, you'll see there's files processing here. Those 2 life insurance policies that were on a single email, I forwarded that email. Both those files showed up, and here comes this septic inspection as well. So Autopilot's going to review these and come up with a plan as to what to do with them. So email to inbox is huge. If you're not using it, do click into the settings, get your address, and start to experiment with that. After we process a file, you're also going to get an email returned, sent back to you to say, hey, success, we've got your file. Here's the files that we got, and here's the subject line of the email. In a circumstance where you've got multiple, say, full access collaborators in your system, and one of your collaborators sends a file in that you didn't know about, you're also going to get an email saying that we processed this file that someone else sent in. So because it's your account, you're the owner of this account, you'll always get emails of when people are putting stuff in there. Okay, so here's this insurance policy. It's got a lot of details that we can extract. We're showing you these details that we've extracted from this document. These details will follow this document everywhere. In the near future, you'll be able to edit these details. These are ones that AI has extracted. Most of the time they're right. In circumstances where they're wrong, don't sweat it just yet. You'll be able to edit those in a future update. So one of the things I can do here is I click plus, creates a new life insurance page for me. Then I'm going to move this file to my policy block, and it's going to autofill all of these things. Okay, just like before, we fill in all the data, even like the end of term, it creates a reminder. I can give this a new name. Okay, now this file that was a septic inspection, there's no suggestion, there's nothing for me to click on to know where to put that. But this drawer, this inbox drawer, stays open, and you can navigate around your system to put it in a place that you want to put it in. So if I forwarded it in there, it doesn't give me a suggestion, but I know it needs to go into my property. I know it's part of my Mill Valley home. I can go into this property page and scroll down to the bottom or wherever I want to put it, and we can call this closing docs. This is part of the sale or the purchase of this. There was a septic inspection. I can just move this file over to that region and drop it in there. Okay, so I didn't have a suggestion there, but I can still move it out of my inbox to clean things up and put it in the right spot. Okay, let's look at another way to get files in. This comes up all the time. This gets used pretty heavily. And let me switch to iOS. So we've got an app in the App Store. Android should be coming later this year, towards the end of the year. That's the plan. But what I like about iOS is not only do you have something in your hand, if you're away from your desk or away from your browser, you can still get access to all your data. If you need a VIN number or you need an account number, you can get all that information from here. But you can also scan documents that come in from the mail or are in a file system or a filing cabinet or something like that. Using at the bottom of this iOS screen, you'll see scan. And I've got an auto insurance policy for one of my vehicles, and I'm going to scan this file right now. You can do single page or multi-page. I'm just going to do scan document. And I'm going to point at this. You just hover over it, and then it takes that picture. As soon as you see the save button light up, you can tap on that. And it's going to send this file to my inbox right away. And then on iOS, I'm looking at my screen here. I get to determine where I want to file this. Or if I wait a couple seconds for Autopilot to finish, it's going to tell me what to do with this file. You can see on the web app behind, it's returned. This is new auto insurance. This will land on iOS shortly, and I'll be able to follow along the prompts from Autopilot to do something with this file. So it knows that I didn't have a tile inside Trustworthy for this auto insurance, and I can just click plus on iOS, just like I could on the web app. I can decide where it's going to be stored. And then once it creates that page for me, you can see these autofills popped up on screen. There's a little purple button that says review. I can expand that by tapping on review just to see the data it's going to automatically extract for me. So not only is it going to pull a provider and insert my policy number and capture this document on that page, but it's going to link it up to my covered drivers, which are 2 of my family IDs, and it's going to link it up to vehicles that it found inside Trustworthy that are listed on this auto insurance. So I can just tap fill details, and it populates this page. So it pulls in my provider, covered drivers, the vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and that was just from pointing my phone at the device or at the document. You can do multi-page documents too, or like Nat said, if you've got a bunch of documents you want to scan, a desktop scanner. I'm using a Fujitsu one here. Nat's got a ScanSnap from Rico. A lot of these scanners, you can point them to an email address. So once they scan the file, they can automatically email or open up a new email with the file attached. And that email could be your Trustworthy inbox. Okay, so you can send them straight to Trustworthy inbox from your scanner. Okay, so that was looking at iOS. You can see I'm really focused on getting data in, because that's the key to success with Trustworthy is let's get data into Trustworthy, get it organized. That way it makes it easier for collaborators you're inviting. It's easier to be prepared for those life moments. That's the first step of success. One last thing I want to look at as far as like ways to get data into Trustworthy. It's something called our Chrome extension. So an extension is like an extra application that plugs into your browser. Right now it's running in Google Chrome. Eventually we hope to get it into Safari and other browsers. For now it's in Chrome. You can download it at the Chrome web store. And essentially what this allows you to do is to have a smaller, lighter version of Trustworthy that's running side by side with you while you browse the web. And this allows you to do a lot of different things. You can upload a bunch of files to the extension without having to log into the Trustworthy app or the web app. You can just move them into the extension. Or you can do things like grabbing screenshots. So some of the data that you encounter that needs to go into Trustworthy is sometimes on a web page. It's not an attachment. It's just like sitting there on screen. Confirmation pages are one of these things. You get these all the time. Feels important because there's a number on there that says, here's your confirmation number. Hopefully you'll never need that, but in cases where you have to follow up on stuff, it's important to have this. So let's say I submitted a medical insurance claim. This claim submission confirmation shows up. What do I do with it? I can grab the Trustworthy extension, just open that up and do this screenshot capability. And what it does is it grabs a screenshot. If I know exactly where I want to put that file, I can browse for it here. If I don't know and I just like want to send it to the inbox, I can do that. And it's going to send this file up to my inbox, and it's going to determine what to do with this data and where to file it. Okay. So if I flip back to Trustworthy for a moment, you'll see there's a file just happens to be sitting there in my inbox. Autopilot's run. It's told me you should move this to your Reynolds Family Medical. That was a tile I created a few moments ago when I uploaded a ID card. So now it's got this page and I can move it to a section in here. So let's say I want to create a new section. We'll call this claims. And let's just move this confirmation to that claims folder. Okay, so I took it from a web page, sent it to the inbox, and then moved it down into the claims folder. If I knew exactly where I needed to file it, I didn't have to go to the inbox first. I could have used the extension to browse to exactly where. One other thing that the extension can do that's kind of neat is if I'm in a email, let's say, what do I got here? Here's a file that's on this email about a damage to a vehicle and the repairs on that vehicle. If the extension is open while you're browsing that, it's extracted this file into the extension right from this email. And now I can send it to where I want it. I can go to the inbox, or if I know this goes into my property, it goes into my Nissan Rogue. And I'm going to create a section. We're going to call this repairs. Okay, I can select that section and send that file there. So I grabbed it from my email. Of course, you could forward the email to your email to inbox, but if you have this extension open, you can also just extract those from Gmail. It works for Gmail right now. But if you're on a different mail client, you can just forward things to your email to inbox. Okay, so that's a bit about getting data in to Trustworthy. You can imagine a time where this is happening automatically. Most of the documents that you're going to send in here are going to be understood to some extent. We've seen some that have like handwriting on them and things like that. That's not always great. If you do encounter something that seems wrong, you can always downvote it and put in some specifics about that. If it categorized it, if it said this is a tax document, but it's actually an insurance policy, you can interact with this And that sends us feedback that we should review our model and figure out how to improve it. So the next time we encounter a document like this, the experience is improved. So don't be afraid to submit those details.
Carl, we're getting some great questions in the chat that actually I think we want to answer while you're still doing the demo, so you can sort of illustrate some of the things.
Yeah.
I think you're going to show permissions next,
Yes.
and then maybe we can jump to the questions.
Yeah. So let's talk briefly about permissions. On both iOS and web, there's a way to get into a collaborators area in Trustworthy. You see a hint of this on the dashboard. We're showing you some of your collaborators, like a real heads up here on who the collaborators are. You can tap this arrow to jump to our collaboration area, or as always, under your settings menu, you can do manage access. Let's look at, I'm just going to jump over to collaborators to tell you a bit about the different types. There's me, I'm the owner, I have access to everything. You can also invite what we call all access collaborators. These could be, in many cases, this is like a spouse or most trusted loved ones. It could be like a personal assistant. It could be a lawyer. It could be a wealth advisor. Depending on who you have in your life that might need access to everything, you can control that. The other thing that gets used mostly for things like, say, tax consultants and CPAs or wealth advisors is this idea of limited access collaborators. You can invite, let me click on Jane for a second. I'll give you an example of what this means. So you can restrict access to a category. So if you remember all these different categories that we have in Trustworthy, in this case, I'm looking at Jane. She has access to finance, taxes, and business. Okay, and full category access. That means she sees everything inside those categories. Here's one where I've got an accountant, and this is Wentworth, and they don't have full category access, but they have access to individual tiles within my taxes category. Let's say I have different tax consultants. Some are for international tax, some are for domestic tax. I can specifically pick tiles within my tax category to share with that person, so they can log into Trustworthy, they could see stuff inside those tiles, but none of the other stuff that's unchecked. Whereas if you had full category access, you'd be able to see all these different tiles. Okay, so there's a way to like mix and match the types of access that people have. Tile access we see get used lots if you're like, let's say you've got a child that's gone away to university, it's their first time sort of away from home. You can share things like, here's the details on the car, here's the details on the insurance policy for the car, here's the mechanic that we use when you damage the car. So you can share all those different tiles with that person or that child, and they'll be able to log into Trustworthy and see just those things. So you can really control what happens with permissions. Okay, hopefully that makes sense.
And so do you want to talk about emergency contacts real quick as well?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. So one other type is emergency contacts. So these are types of people that you can designate as emergency contacts, which means they don't have access to Trustworthy now. They don't have access to any of the data now, but you've designated them as someone who could gain access if something unforeseen was to happen to you or other people within your household. So let's say you passed away or were incapacitated, someone who's an emergency contact who's been designated here, they go through a really light verification process so that we know that they're reachable at email or phone numbers. And then when the time comes for them to gain access, they can go through a background check and identity verification check, and they can provide a death certificate or some other certificate, and we will vet them. We'll do the identity verification to ensure that they are who they say they are, and then we can gradually unlock the account for them so they can gain access if they're tasked with like selling an estate or something like that. So emergency contacts, a lot of our customers are using those to designate who within their circle of trust that they can include as emergency contact, and they don't get access to stuff now, but in the future they can. All right.
Great. Let's tackle some questions. We're getting close to the top of the hour, and Google Workspace has this great feature where people can vote up questions, which is awesome. So the number one question we have is there a search function?
So I was going to jump into, let me jump into an account. So coming soon is search, and it's going to be coming to both iOS and web, and eventually the extension, but we're starting on iOS and web. And it will allow you to search for all of your files and all of your tiles within Trustworthy. I just wanted to do a quick show and tell. And, well, I can't log in, so there we go.
It's not just coming soon, it's coming really soon.
Yeah, so
we've been testing it for a couple of weeks, a couple of months already. We're going to have it in the hands of beta users probably within a week or two. We use it internally, it works great. And it's the next major release of the product is going to include search.
It's something I've been waiting for a while, and I've got just a beta version of it running here. I can open up my search, and I search for something like tax, and I can get sort of tax returns. I can see any files that are in here. I can jump right to my joint 2023 tax return page. So search is very robust. It'll help you search everything. Where we're going to get search to eventually, hopefully later this year, is the ability to ask more open-ended questions of search, or more querying questions like, what's my total deductible across all of my insurance policies in 2024? And it could return that result. For now, when we initially launched it, it's helping you find files and tiles within Trustworthy, so you can get access to data quickly. But we see it becoming more of a AI assistant in the future that can answer questions for you.
Great.
That was a good one.
That was a great setup, because it's the feature that's coming really soon. Thanks for that question. Another great one from a couple of folks is, how do we handle medical files? Is there a medical category? Maybe you can speak to the category, because I know it's on the roadmap, Kyle.
Yep.
But talk to maybe the workaround that people have been using so far.
Right. So there is no medical category right now. It's below Android app as far as like top feature requests, but it's right near the top. We know that we need to have it. We're going to be building for later this year to track all your different prescriptions and vaccinations and diagnoses and scans and whatever other data that you have. The workaround as of right now that we see people use is they'll go into family IDs and go into an individual within the household for which we want to track this information. And often we're using this additional contacts feature. So there's a contacts database sitting here that you can have anybody in there, whether it's a business, a company, a person. You can log all of your different pharmacies, doctors, specialists in your contacts, and then you can link them up to a person as a contact. And then what we see people do is they will create these subsections. You've seen me a couple times create these folders within a page where you can have lab results, prescriptions, diagnoses, and people are moving the files there. Once we have the medical category, we're going to have a mechanism to allow you to take stuff, if you've used a workaround like this, to move that stuff to its rightful home, probably by sending it back to the inbox and then moving it into the new medical category when it's there. So don't be afraid to create these custom sections. They're there to allow you to innovate. We're seeing a lot of innovation of how people are using it. And this is a great example of how to work around something that may not be in there for Trustworthy that you need, but you can still add those documents, secure them in Trustworthy, organize them under an individual to whom they pertain, and use the additional contacts to sort of link things back to the people and professionals that you work with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good one. Next one is about Android. Can you talk about what Android users are doing today and the timeline for an Android native client?
Right. So on Android, because there's no app that you're installing, you're essentially running it in a small screen like this. So I've shrunk my browser. So you'll still use the browser, and it's going to respond to the smaller screen size. When it comes to scanning, which is, I think, the big gap, you can access it. The website is pretty robust. It works pretty well. But scanning third-party documents is a bit tougher. One thing that you can do, if you go to help.trustworthy.com, there's a whole section in here of help documents. And one of the areas is called Getting Data into Trustworthy. And you'll see somewhere in here is scanning files from Android into Trustworthy. So you can use a third-party app. I use something called Scan Genius, and Scan Genius lets you scan the files, and it uses the email to inbox feature. So you configure Scan Genius to send its scans to your Trustworthy inbox. And so you can still scan the files. It'll send it to your inbox, and then you'll catch them and you'll see them in Trustworthy when you revisit your inbox. Okay, so there's a workaround to do a lot of the different things, but we hope to get the Android app into beta towards the year end. We're really excited about that. Like I said, it's our top feature request.
Great. Let's dive back into a couple of slides, then we can take some more questions as people have time.
You're okay. That was my clue to stop presenting, so you can present right now.
Yeah. All right, we're back with slides. Just a couple of things to walk through. If you're not already a user, there are a couple of different subscription packages and software plus service bundles that we have available today. We try and provide a price point for every family. We also do, it's worth mentioning, I don't think many people discover this, but we do also have multi-year and multi-household discounts, and you can combine those discounts if you want. So for example, we have one family who's purchased for 20 years in advance across 5 households. They get a really comprehensive discount for committing their households to Trustworthy. You can actually go to trustworthy.com/pricing and calculate what those discounts look like if that's something you're interested in. But here we have really the 2 subscription packages and the 2 software plus service packages, and let me explain those. The Silver package is pretty much everything in Trustworthy except for the business and contacts categories. Last year, we had a lot of requests from members who owned businesses or had business interests or investments, and we built the business category. What came part and parcel with that was the contacts category. How do you map the contacts across your household or households? Who do you know who to call, and who does things with your family? So that's the delta between those 2 packages. The sort of comprehensive package is Silver, includes most of Trustworthy. If you have business and business interests, you're probably going to want the Gold package. That's our most popular package. Then on the other side, we have these software plus service packages. We've had them really since we started, because what we learned is that folks, a lot of the folks we work with are really time starved, and they're looking for help in getting everything set up and dialed in and even maintaining it. And some of them work with fiduciaries, some of them work with financial coaches or daily money managers. And we also have our own network of Trustworthy Certified Experts who provides this service. If you say, I want a service package, we'll connect you with one of our Trustworthy Certified Experts to help get this all done on your behalf. So you can kind of outsource it and get a turnkey service. There's really 2 levels here. One is the Platinum package that comes with everything in Trustworthy plus 3 hours of service from a Trustworthy Certified Expert. And then this new package, the Diamond package, is really intended for helping aging parents get their estate organized and get everything into Trustworthy. And that includes everything in the whole family operating system plus 6 hours of professional service. And we have a national network. We have coverage. We can usually find someone in the town to go work side by side with the parents. In terms of what you get, this is a new solution. So you get everything in the family operating system, 6 hours, and they're going to sit down with that parent, walk them through the system, show them all the features, set up the collaboration so that the family members are involved and have complete transparency across the system to the degree that the parents want to share. Sometimes, varying degrees of medical conditions are involved. So we've allowed for every kind of family scenario. They'll take paper documents and digitize them. They'll source documents like birth certificates or other things that may not exist yet but need to be captured. And then they can also connect folks to the Trustworthy Marketplace, which is a set of partner services or that have add-on value. If you don't have a will or a trust or a healthcare directive or a medical directive, then we can help source those documents or storytelling, you want to capture stories from your parents, we have providers in that space as well. Really a whole marketplace of different kind of providers around the family information that the experts can help connect to. If you want to learn more about this solution, just trustworthy.com/parents. Lastly, we want to say thank you for attending today. And we have a special discount offer for folks who haven't yet purchased Trustworthy. You can scan this QR code and go directly to the offer, or just capture this discount code TWWEB to get a 20% discount off our gold plan. Let's take a couple more questions. Kyle, do you have any queued up that you'd like to answer?
Yeah,
or direct to me?
There's a couple related to security and how can we reassure people about security at an understandable level. Security is really complex. Just know that we'll say things like, you'll hear things like bank level security, but we sort of go beyond that with this tokenization that Nat had mentioned. This is really key to us, where we take anything that's PII that would associate you to a piece of information like social security or bank account number, and those get separated and stored in completely different areas in different jurisdictions and different repositories, so that if anything did get compromised, they've got a bunch of, inside our databases, a bunch of nonsense strings that make no sense to anybody, and then inside other areas will just be isolated pieces of data that are disconnected from anything that identifies you. So someone might find a series of 12 numbers and not know what that is or how to trace it back to a person. So this tokenization is a huge part of what keeps your data safe inside Trustworthy, beyond all the multi-factor authentication and biometrics and encryption. There's this extra level of extrapolation of separating the data out so it can't be recompiled.
Yeah, okay. I'll just add that for the vast majority of folks, adopting Trustworthy is a meaningful step up in their family information security, because we don't let you enter any information until you've established a really robust password with our password recipe, and you have to have two-factor authentication turned on. It's not an optional thing like you see with other services. It's mandatory, right? You have to choose some second factor, whether it's a phone call or SMS message or biometrics, whatever it is, you have to have it, right? So that already puts you into an elevated position of security for your family information. Compared to when we talk to people, we say, what are you using today? And it's like, well, I have a notebook for my passwords, or I put stickies, around the house, or, those kinds of things. The other element is it's also a personal decision, right? You have to sort of decide your level of comfort. I will say we've come across enough people and heard enough stories now where they wish they had a digital backup because they've dealt with some kind of disaster, whether it was a flood or a fire, or tornado, or hurricane, some kind of climate change related thing where all of their documents got destroyed, and they just wish that, oh, I wish we had Trustworthy before this happened. So there's a whole spectrum there of consideration. Obviously, we've created a very private and secure system and a business model to support that. The other element here is you don't necessarily have to put everything in Trustworthy. You can sort of think of Trustworthy as a treasure map. And we call it, this is a funny story, we have a treasure map because we had an early customer who was a retired Navy captain who actually had put precious metals buried on his property somewhere. And we said, does your family know where the gold and things are buried? And he was like, yeah, I think so. But this is sort of a metaphor for what Trustworthy's become is, so long as you have a pointer to where the thing lives and someone can discover it, or you remember where it is, then that's a really valuable thing. So there's a whole bunch of reasons there to consider Trustworthy. It's sort of a personal decision. I will say we all trust all of our information in Trustworthy. We all use it. All of our family information is in there. So know that we are walking the walk. There's a question here about autopilot, and I think there's an element here of Kyle of how does autopilot work? How is it mapping the relationships from a new document to something that exists? And I'll answer this, and maybe you can add technical description. But one of the key differentiators as Trustworthy is mapping the relationships across your different entities. So you see a property, for example, and there's a mortgage, there's insurance policies. They're all mapped to the other parts of Trustworthy where those things exist, and we're connecting the dots. So when a new thing arrives, Autopilot is saying, I have context for what this document is. I know what this, we've trained the model to say, I know what this document is. This is a letter from your bank or an insurance policy or something else. And I know how to map it to the things that exist in your system or don't exist. So you saw Kyle have both examples there, like, oh, this needs to map to something that already exists in your system, or this is a new thing, create a new place to put this. So that's kind of the magic of Trustworthy, is it's connecting the dots across your entire system. Today, we've created this checkpoint of the inbox, but as Kyle said, in the future, you don't need to be involved. That you can just say, yes, I want this in Trustworthy. Trustworthy is going to figure out how to land it and how to connect the dots. All right, we're a little over time. Happy to stay and answer some more questions. Let's do one or two more. Kyle, do you have ones queued up?
Yeah, there was I think a quick one about account numbers that sit on contacts. You can have a contact and you can put an account number in that contact. And then when you link that contact up to a property, for example, that account number will show. So you can go into your property, you can look at, say, Comcast, and you'll see what your account number is with them if you have to call them or whatnot. The point that's made here is, like, if let's say I have multiple properties and I'm unlucky enough to use Comcast as my provider across all those properties, that account number might be different at each jurisdiction for each property. And how do we handle that? We don't have a great solution for that now, other than creating, the California Comcast and the Arizona Comcast, et cetera, to store those account numbers with each of those contacts. We're going to work on a solution for that in the future. That's like in the weeds, but someone who's dug deep into contacts, like Scott, right, in this case, would know of that. So you're looking at a workaround right now of multiple contacts for Comcast and different account numbers for each.
Yeah, very great question here from Michelle. Can you pre-verify the emergency contact so when the time comes, they're ready to take over and handle things?
Yeah, so we're not doing that now. The extended verification right now is they get an email, they click, verify, just so that we know that they're reachable at that email address. As far as like pre-screening them and doing the identity verification process, it's something we can look at. We're still sort of continually fine-tuning that experience just to make sure it's clear and secure for everybody. So that's something we can look at, is how can we screen those people in advance. Yeah, that's a good question though.
But yeah, they are notified. They're sort of invited into the system. They're given a URL to remember or to bookmark. Yeah, that is happening in advance. Are we verifying that who they are in identity? Right now, that happens after the fact.
There's a great question here from Debbie Rosemont about, can the Chrome extension autofill login info? As of right now, no. However, autofilling forms, not just login information, but say any sort of form that you might encounter. Let's say you're renewing your license and you need to pull in things like your vehicle VIN number and your date of birth and license ID number and all that stuff. We can theoretically use the Chrome extension to fill in any kind of form that has household data requirements. So that's something that we're really keen on. We're with the advent of Autopilot, we've sort of really expedited getting data into Trustworthy, and our next evolution is how do we help people get data out of Trustworthy through form filling and stuff like that. So not only will we look at sort of password manager-esque motions with filling passwords, I think we're probably going to start with something that's not yet solved out there, which is filling forms of other household data that you encounter. So I just went through, one of my kids broke his arm and we had to cancel all these camps and re-register for summer camps and stuff like that were more appropriate for someone with a cast on. And we had to fill in all these online forms of like health card information and medical information and all that stuff, which is all untrustworthy. So it'd be nice to be able to populate those automatically using the extension. Save me a bunch of time, because a lot of the data is not stuff that you recall easily.
Yeah, I think that connects to this other question about, is Trustworthy a password manager? The answer is yes. I would think of it as a password manager light. It sort of depends on the complexity of your online logins, how many logins you have. The things that we don't do today that most password managers do are, create or suggest passwords and form fill. We don't do those things today, but you can you can certainly create a database of passwords and URLs that those things connect to, or more importantly, and we're sort of where we started was, what's the password for this device? How do I get that on? How would my family unlock that if something were to happen to me? Because that's where we see a lot of great things get lost across the family, where assets are just not retrievable. But there is a fair amount of scope there. We talked about form filling. That's a functionality we're building that's on the roadmap already. So you can imagine in the not too distant future, you'll be able to do more password management. We have the Chrome plugin already. So you can see the sort of the building blocks are there. We're just not exactly sure when we'll say, yes, we have a fully fledged password manager. All right. I think there's lots of questions that we're happy to follow up with that are maybe fairly specific about autopilot or some of the other things. Yes, we have recorded the session today, and we'll be happy to share out the details of this session. Thank you, everyone, for attending. It's been great. We're going to do this more, but thanks for attending this first one. Have a great rest of the day.